That's all right, bro. That's all right. That's all right. Just, huh?
Just again, another mic check from you, Dr.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now's the time.
And Ms. Tallulah, mic check for
Tallulah,
traffic.
Okay.
Oh, hang on.
got you on television, girl. We're gonna see you on television. Everybody gonna say, "Who was that little girl on television?" You just listen to your granddad, okay? And just watch and just see what your granddad is doing.
I'm hoping in 45 minutes I can be like her and be asleep.
Okay, is there everything ready?
He's just gonna set some shots and then
Okay.
get mic check.
Huh?
I know, I was scared. You tried to get me over here 2 years ago.
NAACP and empowering the African American community. Is that right, Doc? Pastor Walker, Dr. Tallulah Chenault. Chenault. Okay. Chenault. Okay.
On the screen.
Pastor Walker, you explained to us why. Yeah, okay, that'll give you an opportunity when we talk about background education experience. Go on and, let people know that you're still doing what you're supposed to do. You see, and sometimes you have to do those kind of things. Yeah. Chenault.
The Tallulah Chanel,
We're
yes.
ready for your mic check.
Okay,
Count up to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
That's good. There, so he's got to go from the front to the back to adjust the levels. And Mr. Walker, go ahead.
31, 32, 33, 34. Pastor Kelvin L. Walker. This is my little pretty granddaughter, Bailey. Hey, baby girl. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
All right. Now it's the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. Amen. It's all right.
This is 9:55, right?
Yeah.
9:55.
Okay. And if we get out of this one, Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the African American Community and empowering the African American community. And of course we have with us to talk about the NAACP and the African American community, Dr. Tallulah Chenault. And Dr. Chenault will give us some information in reference to her background, education, and experience. And with Dr. Chenault is Pastor KWalker. And all of us, I think, are familiar with Pastor KWalker, but I don't think that we know too much about Pastor Walker's granddaughter. And he's going to explain her to us this morning when we talk about background, education, and experience. Ms. Chenault, let's start with you by having you to give us some statements in reference to your background, education, and experiences, and take about 3 minutes. And then we'll have Pastor Walker to give us some similar kind of information, and he will also tell us why he is in control this morning of his granddaughter, Bailey. Let's start with you, Dr. Chenault.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say good afternoon, and I'm very happy to be here today. Well, I'm a native of Nashville. I was born and nurtured right here in the Music City. I attended Cameron High School, where I graduated, and from there I attended Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, with a major in psychology and dramatic arts. After which I attended Fisk Meharry Joint Clinical Psychology Program. Did not complete the program, but earned 36 hours toward my clinical psychology degree. I went on to attend Illinois State University, where I earned my master's degree in education with a specialty in special education. After teaching for a number of years, I decided to go back and get another degree, which is in a doctorate degree in education administration and leadership.
And so in a real sense, you've had an opportunity to live around the Nashville community for a long time and do a lot of things educationally within Nashville. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, indeed. Nashville is my home, and Nashville will always be my home. I have 6 siblings here in Nashville. My mother and father also as well were born and raised in Tennessee and in Davidson County. So very much so. And in the last 5 years since I have returned to Nashville, I have been actively involved in the NAACP. Prior to that, I was the executive director of the Urban League in Illinois. But in the last 5 years, as I said, I have been an active member in the NAACP. I've been chair of the Education Committee. I have also been assistant branch secretary. Currently, I am the branch secretary of the NAACP.
Very good. Pastor Walker, let's have you to give us some information. I think that our audience certainly is familiar with you, but they may not know this young lady that you have with you, and explain not only your background in education, but say something about Bailey.
Okay, Dr. Hayne, well, again, thanks for allowing me to be on your show this morning. My name is Pastor Kelvin L. Walker, born and raised right here in Nashville, Tennessee. I attended the public schools here in Nashville. Pretty much everybody been around know my story, you know, that never didn't complete high school. I actually got kicked out of all the public school systems in the state, in Nashville, Davidson County. But went in the Navy at a young age 17. I went into the military, went into the Navy. And when I got out of the Navy, after serving a short period of time there, then served out the full term of my enlistment there. I was kind of one of those characters back during those times. And got out of the Navy, went through OIC, Opportunities Industrialization Center, and got a GED through there. From there, I went to Tennessee State for a while. All the time I was addicted to drugs, all during that period of time in the Navy, and all through my time at Tennessee State University. I wanted to be a fashion designer. And that didn't pan out either because of my drug addiction. But I come here today and I got my little granddaughter. This is my granddaughter, Bailey. Bailey's story is unique in and of itself. On March the 24th, 2015, her mother was murdered. My daughter was murdered here in a domestic situation. And we've been taking care of her. My wife and I have been taking care of her, raising her and her brother. She's 3 years old, her brother's 4. And this is my little princess right here. And she's going to grow up to be a powerful young lady. And that's what we're here today to talk about, you know, empowering the Nashville branch of the NAACP so that we can ensure that there's a voice out there for the future of our children. You know, she's important to me, and her and all of my other grandchildren, she's very important. So we got to do that, empower the NAACP so that we can have a voice for the people out here, especially for our youth.
Very good. And of course, what we'll do, Pastor, is to take our first commercial break, and then we'll get back and talk about, with you and Dr. Chenault, talk about some of the aspects of the NAACP. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Segment, and this is 8-minute.
Okay.
Segment, and so whatever you want to talk about, this is
Okay.
I'll introduce the show again,
Okay.
and then we'll and this 8 minutes you'll have about 4 minutes, and we'll try
Okay.
to put Pastor, give him 4 minutes, and
Okay.
just start off and take about 3 minutes, and then we'll give him 3 minutes and come
Okay.
back and let him
Okay.
close
Wish I
us
had a
out.
clock.
Huh?
Okay.
No, well, you just
Okay, just- okay.
Yeah, just
That's fine.
just yeah. Okay.
Say,
Yeah.
say it all. Say it all.
Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Tallulah Chenault and Pastor KWalker and his granddaughter, Bailey. And we're talking about empowering the NAACP. And Dr. Chenault, let's see if we can pick up during this second segment to give you an opportunity to say something about the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People that you would like for our audience to know this morning.
Well, after giving such a long or a trail of information regarding my education, I would like to state and really explain why I'm here. Not only to talk about the empowerment of the community, but also to talk with the community about some things that I would like to see happen at the NAACP. I'm currently running for president of the Nashville branch NAACP. Why? Because I would like to see a new image, a new focus in our branch. In terms of empowerment, one of my important platforms is voter registration. I think today, with everything that's happening in the election process, that African Americans, in order to be empowered, need to vote. We have always needed to vote, but it is incumbent upon us today to get the vote out. As president of the Nashville branch NAACP, I plan to have a voter registration program every year and all during the year, because I think that's really important. As well, I have
And so in a real sense, voter registration is one of the most important things that you see. Now, why would you think in terms of enlisting and getting African Americans to vote? Why is that important to you now?
Well, I think it's very important because everything is political. Everything is political, from education to economic development is important, to the quality of health care, to affordable housing. If we are not voting, if we are not at the table, then, as I said, we're on the table. And I believe that voting gives the community power, it empowers us, and it's important that we take a stand, not only verbally, that we also take a stand through the vote.
Pastor, looking at some of the things that you believe, and I know you've been involved with the NAACP for a long time, and some of the things that you believe that we ought to do at this particular point in our history dealing with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or any other organization that might be helpful to what we're trying to achieve.
Well, Dr. Haney, I think that when it comes to the NAACP Nashville branch number 5606 here, the most important thing I think that we need to do for the NAACP is to give the NAACP the power that the NAACP is supposed to have in terms of giving the NAACP a voice. You know, just like our vote is our voice, you know, the NAACP, for some reason, has lost its voice here in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know if it's lost it or if it has been intentionally silenced, you know, by maybe the powers that be, because as we know that the NAACP as a whole nationally is the oldest civil rights organization in existence in the United States of America, and it's one of the most powerful, or the most powerful one in here. But for some reason here in this Nashville branch, it doesn't have the power. It's like the teeth has been pulled. And when I first initially got involved with the NAACP a few years ago, I got involved because of what I didn't see the NAACP doing. And rather than sitting back and complaining about it like I hear so many others, I decided to get actively involved in the NAACP to try to, you know, make some things happen. You know, of course I got in there and I saw, you know, a lot of things that I didn't like, and a lot of shenanigans and stuff that was going on and stuff, and I really put a kind of bad taste in my mouth, and I kind of backed off of it for a minute because of some of the things I've seen that took place in the last election a couple of years ago with our current administration, Louis Wallace being the president, current president now. And I kind of backed off, you know, but I still believe that the NAAC can be empowered if you got the right people in there that's not afraid to step up and stand out and challenge these different issues. It's so much happening in our community and our society. You know, people are being pushed out of their neighborhood and their community, pushed way out to the outskirts of town, somewhere like the old folks used to say, somewhere out in Plum Nelly somewhere, you know, and there's nobody saying anything, you know, and it's like the community, our community, the black community is like, man, we don't have a voice. Who's gonna speak for us? Who's gonna represent us? So my thing is, let's empower the NAACP, and I think that Dr. Chenault here would make the perfect president of the NAACP's Nashville branch because of the tenacity that I've seen in her, you know, since she's come on board and become a part of the Nashville branch of NAACP. I know her from years ago. I actually went to school with her brother, younger brother and stuff, and we were really good friends throughout the years and stuff like that. And I didn't know at the time that she was as tenacious as she is, but from being in some of the meetings at the executive committee meetings and stuff, and seeing her, you know, push the issues and the things like that, you know, I said, well, you know, when I found out she was running for president, I said, yeah, I'm on board. You know, I really wanted to see that happen. And of course, I'm seeking a position as third vice president of the NAACP because, you know, like I say, somebody got to say something, somebody's got to do something, and apparently what we have there, we got some good people there, but it's everything rises and falls on leadership. If leadership is weak, if leadership is ineffective, if leadership is disregarding the fact that it is leadership, then leadership needs to be changed, and I think it's time for a change in the leadership of the NAACP so that the NAACP can be empowered and be the NAACP that it's supposed to be, and stop playing these games.
Very good. And Dr. Chenault, we've got about a minute and a half before the end of this segment. And so you think that you have what is necessary in order to bring this organization together. Say something about that.
Yes, sir. I believe that I have what is necessary to be a leader, a strong leader in the Nashville branch in NAACP. I have worked tirelessly for the last 5 years. I have assumed a number of positions in the NAACP. I have exerted energy in trying to get issues out front so that the community as well as the establishment can understand that regardless of what the matter is, it's not about race, it's about right. And there are a number of issues that have confronted the community in the Nashville area that have not been, as Pastor had said, has not really been vented and discussed in our community. So very much so, I believe that I am a strong leader and I can lead the NAACP into a successful year.
Very good. What we'll do now, Dr. Chenault, is to take this second, final commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. When it comes out, nobody will ever be able to tell that you're rattled. You don't look rattled to me.
I can't help it.
No, this might be your first experience.
It is.
And you have to admit that this is an unusual kind of experience and whatnot, but we're making it through, and so we've got 10 minutes.
So what are we going to do?
So what do you want to talk about? during the last 10 minutes. See, when we come back, we'll have 10 minutes.
Right.
And so what you want to talk about, what? Voting? Let's talk about the suffrage.
You want to?
And what you're planning on doing in reference to the suffrage and etc. Whatever you wish to talk about. And you started off, and Pastor will help, give you some information in reference to what he has to say.
And then, lay out there, what you want to do is, as
it'll all come together. Okay?
And how you can take this
Yeah.
organization to the next level.
Okay. Yeah, just. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Tallulah Chenault from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and Pastor KWalker, who's also a member of the National Association, and his granddaughter who's with us. And this, I think, is her first television experience, and she'll learn. And I think that what we're trying to do today is to not only empower the community, Dr. Chenault, but to talk about some of the ways, that is the suffrage, how that might be, we might be able to do that. So let's use the last few minutes to talk about voting in the suffrage.
Okay. Voting, as we know, is extremely important in our community. Our visibility, our empowerment, all depends on whether or not we register, get our documents in order, and vote. Voting in Nashville, Tennessee, regardless of whether it is the school board, whether it's Congress, our senators, and our representatives, is extremely important. A number of policies have been passed in our council meetings, in our Senate, that are not beneficial per se to the African American or black community or the community of those who are impoverished. And the only way in which African Americans and other minority groups are going to truly receive social justice is that we vote, that we make an appearance at our council meetings, that we vote, especially in this presidential election. Now, as a branch secretary of the NAACP, we are bipartisan, okay? We cannot actually go on camera or say who our community should vote for. But what I'm asking our community to do is look at the issues, think about the issues, not what people are saying now, but what they've said a month ago, what they've done a year ago, 2 years ago, and vote for your best interest. That is what we are going to push at the NAACP, and it will be a year-around project and program to make sure that we get out and we vote.
You know, Pastor, I think we've said on many occasions on this particular show that in Nashville, I think somebody said at one time that only 6 or 7% of the population actually got out and voted during any election. And so if you can organize people in such a way that you can get 20-25% of the community to participate in the suffrage, you can almost carry every election from that perspective if only such a small number of people actually vote. What do you think about that?
That's very true. I mean, you know, our voice, again, Dr. Haney, is in our vote. You know, we got to be able to get out there. If you bring people together, and see, politicians, they go where people are voting. You know, they service areas. They look at areas where, you know, where they're getting large percentage of the votes. They look at a zip code and they're getting a small percentage of the vote. Then, you know, they're not going to focus their attention on that particular area right there, because they're saying, well, the people there, they're not concerned about themselves. But on the other hand, if organizations like the NAACP will put together a consistent year-round voting and registration drive, you know, not just waiting until an election come up and then, you know, 2 months before the election, here you're out there registering people to vote, but make it an ongoing, consistent thing, keeping it always in the forefront of the people. Then the people will begin to see the value in voting, you know, and that's what we have to do. We have to keep it in front of them. Another thing that, in addition to all of that, the NAACP, you know, we have to be visible. We have to be vocal. and we have to be valuable, and we got to show up that we have value in this community. You know, I've got a granddaughter right here. You know that you know, she's got a future. You know, and I'm the one that's got to be looking forward toward her future and making sure that if she has a legitimate grief or gripe concerning something, that injustice that takes place in our society towards her, that she got an organization that she can go to. And that's what the NAACP has had a long-standing reputation as an organization that our people could go to if they were having issues. And let me be clear about this. The NAACP is not just an organization just for African Americans or black people. You know, it's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, for people of color. Everybody is a color. You know what I'm saying? Everybody, I don't care what race you are, you're a color. You know, so it's for everybody, and everybody can benefit from the work of the NAACP. But the thing we got to get to right now with this local branch of the NAACP is putting some power in it. Because right now, you know, you hear people say, well, you got a bark and no bite. This branch don't even have a bark. You know what I'm saying?
So, and so in a real sense, just to sort of make people aware of the history of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, I think that we've had an opportunity to talk to many members from that organization, and you've been responsible in a real sense for bringing a large number of people to us dealing with the National Association. As a matter of fact, Dr. Chenault here is here primarily because of your influence with the organization. And so with Dr. Chenault's leadership and the commitment on the part of others, and I think as she indicated that you want to make registration a year-round activity, not to register only 2 or 3 months before the time of election. And if you can get that as an ingrained idea among people who ought to vote, then I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to just lock in steadily just on the voting thing, because there's so many other things, issues that's plaguing our society and stuff. I mean, with the police brutality and all kinds of things, discrimination in housing, all these different things. There's so many different committees within the branch of NAACP that need to be empowered with people that have the concern about what's going on in our community. So I'm saying to people, if you got a concern about what's going on in our community, and you've met and you've met and you've met, and you got all these great ideas and these strategies, but yet you don't have a power source to put them into it and to make it happen, then we're encouraging you to come and be a part of NAACP, because the membership part of the NAACP has a power base within itself. Because when that executive committee presents an issue, it has to be ratified, am I correct, by the membership.
Yes.
So we need members, people to join and get behind this thing. And I believe that Dr. Chenault will make the right leader to lead the NAACP's Nashville branch into this next level of growth and development, so it can be actually benefit the people that we serve in this community.
And what I would like to add to that is, for those of you, our life members, our members who have decided in the past that you no longer want to be members of the NAACP, give us another chance. Give the NAACP organization another chance to get it right. We want to change the image of the NAACP. We are determined to change our focus and to advocate for the community. And as Pastor said, for all people of color. And as he said, we're all colored people. So join us, please, and help to make our organization what we know it can be, to align with our mission, our historic mission of the NAACP, which is to support social justice. Thank you.
As a matter of fact, I think, Dr. Chenault, as we end this show for today, the NAACP has a reputation of being an interracial organization in the sense of its establishment and its founding. And it goes way back in terms of social justice and racial justice and et cetera, and et cetera. And so I think that what the two of you are trying to do is very, very important in terms of understanding that organization and what that organization has done and what that organization can do. Pastor, we've got about a half a minute.
I would like to say just one thing. Instead of people sitting back criticizing, talking about what the NAACP is not doing, I would say to them people, stop complaining about what the CP is not doing, but get involved with the NAACP and make it do what you want the NAACP to do. It takes people to bring the power into the NAACP. So don't complain about it. Don't talk about it. Don't criticize it. Get involved with it, and then make it do what you feel like it should be doing. And if you're not going to do that, then you shouldn't say nothing. Just be quiet. You know.
And of course, let me thank the two of you and the three of you, as well as Bailey here, and thank you, Pastor, for bringing her by here with us, because I know that it was your responsibility, but to bring her by, and we'll be back next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
stand up for me.
Do you have a pocket on this side?
Yeah, both sides.
Okay, let's put this inside there.
That alt-right, Pastor, means the
Alternative right.
alternative right. Yeah, that's the other right. That's what I thought it was.
Over against the mainstream.
Main right,
Yeah.
the alt-right movement. And the right movement, man.
Yeah.
The alt-right movement.
It's extreme.
Extreme, yeah, I can understand.
So what I thought we would talk about is
Yeah.
what is it? When did it start?
The alt-right movement and the
Yeah.
election of 2016.
In the presidential race of 2016.
Yeah, okay.
So what I thought we would talk about is what it is, when it began, as the first segment. Second segment, what is the impact of it on American social, cultural, and political life?
Okay.
And then finally, how do we deal with it? You know, what can we do to counter
Okay.
the rise of that kind of movement?
Okay, the alt-right movement and the presidential election of
Yeah.
2016.
And for long, it's really America's alternative right
Yeah,
movement
that's what I thought.
and the presidential race of
This is the
2016
other right.
Yeah.
You see, that it's right over there, but these folks are
are more
way
extreme.
over there.
More
you see.
extreme.
So
more
this is the
extreme.
alternative right.
That's
You
right.
don't want to be with the extreme right. You can go on even a little further over.
That's right.
So,
That's
yeah,
right.
That
That's
was the
right.
impression that I had.
Say your name, count to 10.
Big pardon?
Say your name and count to 10.
Lewis Baldwin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
'16
Presidential race.
race. Yeah, presidential race. Thank you and welcome back to the show this morning, or welcome to the show this morning. We're talking to Dr. Lewis Baldwin, and the topic today is the alternative right movement and the presidential race of 2016. I think this movement is often referred to as the alt-right movement, and Dr. Baldwin will give us some information in reference to this movement as well as some of the other aspects of the movement. But before we do that, Dr. Baldwin, let's see if we can have you to give us some statements in reference to who you are, and I don't think that you need to explain to anybody in reference to who you are because you've been with us all along for a long time, but nevertheless there might be a couple of people who might not know who you are. They've heard of you, but they might not have seen you before.
Exactly.
And so for those individuals, let's take the first segment to talk about who you are and make some statements in reference to this alternative right movement.
Yes, well, I'm a professor emeritus of religious studies at Vanderbilt University. As you well know, I taught at Vanderbilt in the Department of Religious Studies for some 30 years. Before retiring in 2013. I'm from Camden, Alabama, the Alabama Black Belt, where I participated in demonstrations during the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. I was educated at Talladega College in Alabama, Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York, and did my graduate work receiving the PhD at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. And after completing my PhD in 1980, I started a career in teaching. I went to Worcester College in Ohio. I was there from 1981 to 82, 1 year. 2 years at Colgate University, 1982 to 84. And in 1984, I took a position at Vanderbilt in the Department of Religious Studies, and I was there until my retirement in December 2013.
And so you've been involved in education at the highest level for the longest, and you've received all of those things that are necessary for people who've been involved, Professor Emeritus and
That's right.
Professor this and Professor
That's
that.
right.
And you're also, one thing I think you should also mention to those members of our audience who might not know you, that you are really a Martin Luther King scholar.
That's right.
When I say that, I literally mean a Martin Luther King scholar in all aspects. Say something about
I've been writing about Dr. King for more than 30 years, and I'm concerned not only about his roots in the South, about his contributions to the Civil Rights Movement, but also about his legacy. What legacy of ideals and struggle did he leave for us as we deal with the continuing problems of poverty and racism and economic injustice, violence and human destruction? So I'm very much concerned about what Dr. King would have to say to us today, what we can learn from him as we continue to deal with these problems.
And today, Dr. Baldwin, we're going to talk about the alternative right. Explain to our audience for the next couple of minutes exactly what you mean when you talk about the alternative alt-right movement.
Yes, the alt-right, alt is short for alternative. The alt-right movement actually began around 2008 with a guy by the name of Richard B. Spencer. And Spencer used that term alt-right to refer to a mindset of right-wing conservative extremism. And also he was referring to a movement that used the social media, the websites, to advance a ideology of anti-immigrationism, an ideology of feminism, an ideology of anti-multiculturalism. They are against multiculturalism, which means that they're also against diversity. And that's something that we've been fighting for in this country for years. They are against political correctness. They are nativistic, xenophobic, and they promote an ideology of white supremacy, even calling for a white homeland. So what we are talking about is an extreme right-wing movement that is an alternative to mainstream conservatism, establishment conservatism. And the movement was started by Richard B. Spencer, And lately, of course, you've had people like Jared Taylor and Stephen Bannon who have come on board. And what they've tried to do is to normalize hate speech, to give some intellectual respectability to hate speech and white supremacist rhetoric and white nationalism.
Okay, and so what we'll do, we'll take this first commercial break and then we'll come back and pick up. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. That's that question, the impact of the movement.
You guys ready to go?
Yeah, anytime.
Not everyone can be, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is everything going well, though? Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Lewis Baldwin from Vanderbilt University, a retired professor from that institution, who's talking about the alternative right movement or the alt-right movement. And I think now, Dr. Baldwin, we'd like to talk about the impact.
Yes,
I think you've given us some idea in terms of who and how this movement started. But what impact is this movement having?
I think we have to understand that the impact on our country is not only evident on a social level, but also culturally and politically. What they are doing is reviving white supremacist rhetoric. Many of them are calling for a white homeland, white nationalism. They're xenophobic. There's a fear of immigrants. And also, these movements use the internet, as I said, and the websites to advance a policy of anti-immigrationism, anti-multiculturalism, anti-feminism, anti-political correctness. And they are actually reviving much of what we saw in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And my fear is that we will go back to the 1920s and 30s in terms of race relations, because they penetrated the ranks of law enforcement, and that could explain the shootings, the killing of black men in cities throughout the country. They penetrated the criminal justice system, and with groups like the Tea Party, they penetrated national politics. So the impact, I think, is there not only socially and culturally, but politically. And we have to be very careful about what's going on in our country today. We see, in terms of politics, the impact of the alt-right movement on Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Donald Trump chose Stephen Bannon to be the executive director of his presidential campaign. And Stephen Bannon, of course, is the chairman of Breitbart News Network, which is a platform for the alt-right. So we need to be careful. Hillary Clinton made a speech, I think back on August 16, talking about the role of the alt-right in political circles in this country. And I'm wondering to what extent we actually listen to her, because what is happening here is that the alt-right is trying to find a platform on the national political level. And if they get fully involved in national politics, they're already involved at the congressional level, but if they get involved at the executive level, then we're going to go back to the 1920s and 30s, because what you have here is a movement that wants to restore white supremacy, that has a fear of immigrants, especially Muslim immigrants, that is anti-feminism, that is not concerned about political correctness, that wants to normalize, not only normalize hate speech and white supremacist rhetoric, but also bring some intellectual respectability to hate speech and white supremacist rhetoric. So I don't think we can overestimate the impact of the alt-right on our society socially, culturally, and politically.
So for a long time, we might have thought of this movement as a fringe
Exactly.
movement that's somewhere way outside of everything. But now
It's-
what they're saying is that we are the alternative right, and the right that we've been dealing with is not enough.
Exactly. Not only are we a fringe movement, we are becoming mainstream. Mainstream, and Lord help us if this movement it has already penetrated national politics with congressional leaders, Senate, House of Representatives. But Lord help us if this movement has a great impact on who we elect as president. And that's my greatest fear, is that we will elect a candidate that has really given a platform to the alt-right. And if we do that, then of course the future of race relations in this country is very much in question.
And the idea that that this organization advocates is something that I think, as you've indicated, will undercut and undermine almost any kind of diversified relationships
Exactly.
that we could have in this country.
When you talk about racial diversity, and we're a very racially diverse country with African Americans, whites, and Latino Americans, Asian Americans, the alt-right movement sees that as a problem. And many of them, as I said earlier, are talking in terms of a white homeland. So we have to be careful with the attack on racial and ethnic diversity. The attack on political diversity are very much, people on the alt-right are very much suspicious of mainstream politics. They're also very much suspicious of a society that is diverse in terms of religious orientation. And we are a society that, you know, we have Christians, we have Muslims, we have Hindus.
We have a constitution that allows us to have that. And so anybody who would go against that is basically against the United States Constitution. When you don't stand for religious liberty, then you're against the Constitution.
Yeah, religious liberty, ecclesiastical independence. We are a nation that supports those kinds of principles on the basis of our Constitution. So the alt-right opposes that kind of diversity. And that's what we have to be very careful about. We have to understand that perhaps these elements have already penetrated law enforcement, have already penetrated the criminal justice system. We want to be careful that they don't penetrate the whole of national politics. Because if they do, with their anti-black, anti-Jewish, anti-Muslim, anti-feminist, anti-political correctness rhetoric, if they achieve prominence on the national political level, then we are in trouble.
And you think that Mr. Trump is in a position to create that kind of trouble for all of us with their support? Is that
yes,
what we're saying?
interestingly enough, the alt-right has embraced him, and they view him as a model for what they are about. David Duke of the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazi elements view Donald Trump as their man. And so we have to take that seriously and try to understand that we are possibly going back. We're turning back the clock. We are a nation, we are in 2016. We want to move forward. We want to, establish the principle of progress and some advancement in terms of race relations, in terms of our social, cultural, and political maturity, but we will never do it if we succumb to what the alt-right is all about.
And they're trying to really increase their influence almost in every aspect of American society.
Yes, every aspect of American society. And if they accomplish that at the political level, particularly at the executive branch of the federal government, then I would say that we have a great cause to be concerned.
Yes, and it will be a situation that we've not known in America. People might talk about us not making any kind of progress on race relations. Then and we're getting ready for this second commercial break, and then we'll get back and make some more statements. But people are talking about us not making any progress, but these organizations would be a tremendous disadvantage. And we'll be back with our follow this very, very short commercial break.
It's on. Talk for me.
Hello, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
With the signal.
Hold on here. Talk for me.
Hello, I'm here. Okay, very good. And so we've got the last 10
How
minutes.
do we deal with this issue? How do we encounter this problem
Okay.
in order to resolve the issue
Okay.
of xenophobia and
Okay.
racism, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
And I
That's-
want
mean,
to talk
you look
about
at-
Hillary Clinton's speech and talk about
Yeah, well, pump
what
her up
we
as,
can
yeah,
do.
pump her up as much as you possibly can, man, because
Because
all
Hillary said on
alternative-
yesterday that we have to appeal to every segment of the American whites, blacks, to encounter what's actually
That's
going
right.
on and challenge it.
Because these folks, America First is talking about
Exactly.
America the First as we knew America
Yeah,
First when
America
the
has
first
always
term
meant-
was first out.
Yeah,
See,
America has always been a melting pot
That's
of
right.
people. You know.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Lewis Baldwin, and the issue is the alternative right movement and its impact upon American society, especially the political society and the political election of 2016. And so, Dr. Baldwin, let's pick up where we left off, and this is our final segment. I think we've got about 9 minutes in this segment, but let's try to give our audience as much information as you can possibly give them concerning what we have to do and how we ought to react to this movement. And make it serious, because this is a serious...
Yes, I think we have to react on a number of levels. This movement, of course, uses, as I said, the websites, social media, to advance its ideals, its values, its ideologies. So what we have to do is to use social media also to counter this kind of movement. We also have to appeal to our political leaders like Hillary Clinton and others, Democratic Party, Republican Party, to really face what's happening. Hillary Clinton made this speech, I think, back on August 16th about the alt-right, trying to warn us about what's happening in terms of its program of anti-immigrationism and anti-diversity and anti-multiculturalism. So what we have to do is to take this seriously. I don't think we are very serious about our response at this point about what's going on. We need to understand that what is happening with the alt-right is really a normalization of hate speech. And not only a normalization of hate speech, but the idea of bringing some intellectual respectability to hate speech and white supremacist rhetoric. And that's not what we are about in this country. We are a country that resulted from a melting pot of races and ethnic groups. Blacks, African people, Asian people, Latinos, European peoples. And we need to understand that that's what we are about. That's who we are. And if we understand that, I think we will counter any movement or oppose any movement that seeks to divide us on the basis of race and ethnicity and religion, which is what the alt-right movement is about. We are facing a challenge. And if we don't deal with that challenge through social media, the internet, through our politics, etc., then we'll go back, I think, to the 1920s and 30s in terms of race relations.
Do you believe, Dr. Baldwin, that this is the most serious threat that we've had against American democracy since emancipation?
Exactly. I think this is the most serious threat. I think the most serious threat to our existence as a nation is internal. We talk a lot about ISIS and the external threats with Islamic terrorism, and that is a threat. But I think the greatest threat to our survival as a nation is internal. And it results from the alternative right and from the more radical right-wing, conservative, extremist movements that are against diversity, that are promoting white supremacy, xenophobia, anti-Semitism. I think that's our greatest threat. Nations, great civilizations are often destroyed from within, not from without. So we have to be concerned about what's going on in our society, and while realizing also that there are external threats.
And so in a real sense, we've never had to really face anything like this alternative right, and especially its ability to sort of move into the regular political organizations,
Exactly.
the regular political parties. All other times, these were generally third-party movements and et cetera, and et cetera.
Fringe
But
movements.
Fringe movements.
Yeah.
But this movement has somehow climbed into into the political process, and it sort of considers itself one of the two major political parties.
Exactly.
It appears to me.
Not only the political processes, but as I said earlier, law enforcement, criminal justice system. We see the penetration of this alt-right movement at all levels. And if we're not careful, we will destroy ourselves. Not forget about it, but we have to understand that the greatest threat to our survival and welfare as a nation may not be ISIS, may not be external terrorism. It might be the kind of domestic terrorism and the kind of extremism that exists within our own nation.
And that's becoming more and more apparent.
Exactly.
And sometimes some of the things that you would have thought would never be possible
Yeah.
prior to the last year and a half
Yeah.
now seems to be something that could possibly happen.
Exactly.
Unless we are resolute in terms of how we try to. What
Exactly.
should we do now in terms
I
of?
do think that we need to take seriously what politicians like Hillary Clinton are telling us about the alt-right. We need to also appeal to the white community to become more conscious of what's going on and to use the resources of that community to counter what's going on. See, people of color cannot deal with that issue alone. You have African Americans, you have Latino Americans, you have Asian Americans, and all are potentially targets of the alt-right because they are against diversity. They are against multiculturalism. And what we have to do is to call all Americans to the task of speaking out against any form of intolerance and bigotry, which is what the alt-right movement is about. We should speak out against the restoration of any kind of white supremacist doctrine or white supremacist practices. And I think we all have a responsibility, a moral responsibility in that regard. And I think our greatest challenge is to get the white communities of this country to understand that this alt-right movement poses a threat to American democracy. And that they too have a role in terms of undermining that movement and virtually, in the end, eliminating it from
And for those who might assume that this movement is only anti-immigrant and anti-black and et cetera, have to recognize that if they come into force, that it's going to be anti-white.
And it's
for
anti-American.
For those who believe in it.
It's
Yes,
anti-American
that's-
because our values really, constitutionally speaking, has to do with what? Freedom, justice, and the pursuit of happiness for all people. And you can't have that with a movement that preaches white supremacy, that embraces nativism and xenophobia, white nationalism that calls for a white homeland. We can't have a diverse society that gets along in harmony, that advances its welfare, if we're going to allow movements like that to survive and to sustain themselves.
You know, Dr. Baldwin, I guess the strange thing about it is that when I first heard of this movement, I sort of thought of it as a fringe movement. But now this movement is really becoming one of the most important movements in American society.
It's becoming
And
mainstream.
it has almost regularly captured one of the political parties, one of the great political parties of this time. It's only that far.
And not because of the moderate Republicans, because people like George W. Bush and his father, George H.W. Bush and Jeb Bush and others, who are moderate Republicans who are legitimate conservatives.
But they recognize the
But they
importance.
recognize
That's right.
that what's happening here is a mindset of extreme right-wing Republican conservatism. And even they reject that because they understand that it has a lot to offer in terms of dividing our country rather than bringing us together.
Very good. And Dr. Baldwin, let me thank you for bringing by that information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.